Hello and welcome to The Magic in You, where I am here with Tracy Fracshe, who is a third-degree Traditional Gardnerian High Priestess with over 35 years of experience in the craft. Born and raised in New Jersey, she now leads a Coven and a teaching group in North Carolina in the US, a journey that has been shaped by many twists of fate. Tracy is deeply devoted to her spiritual path and her professional role as a trauma services, where she brings compassion and resilience to those navigating some of life's hardest moments, which is you're very busy at the moment, Tracy, but we might talk about that in a moment after we've talked about the craft. So Tracy's interests span the paranormal, the occult, holistic healing. She's also a certified Reiki teacher and master, and she's also appeared on Brian Kane's Coven YouTube series. So if I can find the YouTube series that she appeared on, I'll put that below for you to check out. And she continues to be an active voice in the witchcraft community. Outside ritual and service, Tracy finds joy in gardening, reading, dancing, and revealing all things witchful. So I'm just going to change the screen, Tracy, since you've been jumping on, which is fantastic, and welcome you to The Magic in You.
Thank you so much, Frances, and thank you for getting up at the crack of dawn for me. I really appreciate it. I wish I was there with you in Australia instead of here, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. But that's okay. So we've got a little bit of feedback, but that's okay. This is modern technology. Why don't we just start, for the people who don't know you, you've been involved in the craft for some 35 years, which is probably older than some people who may be watching this. So how did you get started? And what I'm really interested in, what was it about the Gardnerian tradition in particular that drew you and continues, I suppose, with there's so much variety around today, continues to be your sort of like your traditional path?
Okay, so as with many people, I started with meetup groups and basically public ritual. That was the kind of thing that really started on the path toward the Gardnerian tradition. I belong to a small eclectic coven called Circle of the Sacred Light, and everybody eventually went their separate ways. And I said, there has to be more to it than this. This can't be it. And I started studying all the traditions of witchcraft, and then I came upon Gardnerian. And what I knew was that I wanted to be involved with something that started at its origins. And that's when I found the Gardnerian tradition. And I was lucky enough through someone in one of these meetup groups to put me in touch with Deborah Lipp, who was living very close to me and who's a Gardnerian High Priestess. And so she took me on and I apprenticed with her outer court group. And I ended up initiating with her and being with her coven for 9 years until I moved here to North Carolina and started my own outer court group, which was amazing because it's North Carolina and it's a very conservative state. But within the first month we were here, we had a lot of people. And now I still have an outer court, a teaching group, and my coven. And I think what's kept me so invested and where my heart is with the Gardnerian tradition is that it goes, like I said, it goes back to the origins with Gerald and what his vision was. Now, Gerald, I don't think Gerald anticipated there being a Gardnerian tradition, but here we are. And I think that for me, I want to do what I think that would make Gerald proud. I follow what my high priestess passed down to me, which was passed down to her. I mean, I think that we are 6 degrees of separation from Gerald. So there's not that much of different influences in our my downline. So I feel like I try to keep things the way I feel that Gerald would have wanted them. And I think that's really I think that's important. So that's what that's what I share with my coven and my students. They and they feel the same way. They want, this is what they, and that's what, for me, that's what I consider traditional, because I know there's a whole schism about what's traditional, what's not traditional, and I don't go by that. I mean, as I said, everybody's welcome in my teaching group. The only thing they need to have is a sincere interest in the Gardnerian tradition and a willingness to learn and do the work. Other than that, you know, that's what I consider traditional.
That's wonderful, and thank you for sharing that. I do have one question. This is one that I hear, well, we probably all hear quite often, is because we were looking at, so writings, so Gardner 50s, could even been earlier, you know, depending
Right.
on the stories, where he got his material from. And our societal views on a lot of things have changed since that time. Has that impacted any of your teachings? And I'm just sort of thinking, because I know in my own sort of like study and involvement of the craft, there's things that we know these days are no longer fact. So I don't sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. I just sort of move them from, say, fact, or what they might have been sort of fact or craft truth at that time, to craft lore or history, or sort of evolve it into that way. I'm just wondering, have you come across things very similar? And how do you sort of navigate, especially the changing attitudes, or you don't care? How do you do that?
There are some things that I feel, and it may be controversial, but there's some things I don't feel should be changed. I think they're core teachings, and I don't think they should be changed. Like, someone recently said to me, "Well, there is no polarity in the craft, and it was never meant to be a fertility religion." And I try to do my best to research everything to see what Gerald's vision of it was. And those are the things that I found. You know, this is what keeps up. This is what keeps coming up to me, is yes, this is how he described it. Now, that's, you know, some people say, well, you know, you're excluding a whole faction of people when you say, you know, there's polarity, male and female polarity. But no, because there's also, that doesn't necessarily mean biological male and female. It also can mean energetically speaking. So I've tried to incorporate that into our outer court. We've had a transgender student that came to us, male to female transgender. She said, "I'm a female." Okay, fine. As far as we were concerned, that's what she was. Then she said, "Well, it's not working out for me. I'm gender neutral, non-binary." Well, that was a little tricky because, one, we've never dealt with a participant that was gender neutral, non-binary. So what we did was we did our best to make her feel comfortable in circle. If you just tell me what you want to do. If you don't feel like you want to identify yourself either way, that's fine with us. As I said, as long as you have a heartfelt interest in the craft, we're good. We're good. But I know that right now, especially here, there's so much chaos around that topic. And that disappoints me because, you know, I think there are bigger things. There's bigger chaos going on that we can focus on than that kind of thing. Okay. I think there's a spot in the craft for everyone.
Yeah.
And as long as we are willing to evolve and change, that's fine. But I don't think some people aren't, and some people are. As far as I'm concerned, like I said, I passed down the tradition. It was passed down to me. And anybody who's willing to accept that in my outer court group and my coven is welcome to be here.
Yeah, and it's also important to sort of keep in mind that this tradition has, you know, should we say, boundaries or perceptions, but it's not the only way of presenting the craft. There are other traditions out there, and
There
there's
are.
also, and sometimes I think as humans we sort of get too caught up in our own perceptions, our own labels, and as you did say, the whole sort of polarity thing, the masculine feminine aspect goes beyond gender really, but we're just so fixated sometimes on gender, and it's just like
Right.
no, sometimes we need to just move beyond that. And then
Right.
as you've said, if it's new territory, let's have a go, and let's sort of like see what we can identify with and what we can actually adapt. So congratulations for
Exactly.
you you for going to unmarked territory in that response and that regard.
I mean, you know, it was a challenge. I actually went to my high priestess and I said, "What do we do here? I have no idea. I've never been presented with something like this, but I want to do what's best for that person so that they feel comfortable, that they don't feel alienated or they don't feel like I'm trying to make them choose between one or the other, that I can help them navigate the Gardnerian tradition, being who they are." And I think that's important because, as long as you feel comfortable, you that's where your power is. Because if you come into circle and you feel any kind of distress, you feel like you're an outcast or something's not working for you, the energy just like drops at that point. And that's not what you want. You want
Mm.
everybody to feel like family.
Oh, definitely. Yes. And you did mention too that you run both an outer court and your actual coven. So isn't that a lot of work for you as high priestess? 'Cause I know some groups just say no, you just, if you want to join us, you basically have to be initiated into the coven. But now you're running the outer court too. How much work does
Oh,
that
it's a
entail?
it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work because you're doing 2 rituals a month. You're doing 2 separate Sabbats. Um, Outer court is more involved than inner court. So, you're preparing, you're studying ritual, then you're cleaning and you're preparing the whole house and what you need for that specific ritual. Or are you going to do a working and what is it? And then getting everybody there at the same time, because some of them, I always tell them, you want to, even though you're an initiate, you want to come to outer court because be there supporting the outer court member. You want to train them, you want to educate them, you want to make them feel that they're that you're there to guide them. And so it's a lot for everybody. It's a lot for my coven and me. So at this point, we're down to one outer court person, and so far there's no other takers. So I'm going to be glad when that person is initiated. Until we get other people that are interested in our outer court, it's going to be just inner court, and I'm going to be so happy.
Something that a lot of people don't realize is just like they just turn up, and it's just like,
Yeah,
but it's more than people just turning up. It's like, especially when it's actually in your own house, you've got to set up the room and sit and do all the behind the scenes stuff as well, and it does take a lot of work
it
as
takes a
well.
lot of time, and then you're working. And as you know, I work in trauma, so that's a lot. And then I have 3 little dogs and 8 cats, and that's a lot. And you're meeting people, you're meeting them a couple of times, you're bringing them into your home, you're hoping they're not crazy, and, and so far we've been lucky that they haven't, and if they have been, we're like, Maybe this is not the right group for you," but we try, we make every effort for them to experience this and decide for themselves if it's the right thing. And thankfully, it's usually them who decides it's not the right thing. Because I'm like a softie. I never like to tell somebody, this is not right for you, and maybe another tradition, another group would be right for you. We had a gentleman recently who he lost his wife 6 years ago, and he was very into the Baptist religion. and there were pictures of him on social media in front of the Baptist church. And send them out a little application to fill out. And he really didn't fill out anything. And I finally said to him, can I just ask you why at this point of your life, at 50, over 50 years old, you decided to go into seek witchcraft? He says, well, I'm looking to invent myself. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe you should take up golf or like maybe match.com. I mean, this is like especially the Gardnerian tradition. I tell them, listen, this will push you out of your comfort zone. And for someone like that, I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is not a good thing. So I just told him maybe you should do a little bit more research. And then if
Yeah.
you're still interested, get back to me.
Yes, yes. And I think too, even social media has an influence to sort of play in this area, because I think, and I'm not, and it sounds like I'm dishing over social media, but how people see witchcraft these days has definitely changed. And it's almost like it's a catch-all word. And it's just like, but when it comes to a tradition, it's like, it's not what you see. It's not all about moon water and spell jars. It's,
Yes.
I mean, I'll sit there, I'm going, I've never, until 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I hadn't actually heard about moon water and spell jars. There
Right.
were sort of things around, but it wasn't a focus of what I do. Even spell working is not a focus of what I do. It's
No.
more of sort of religion and worship. So I guess trying to explain to people that it's not a social group. You're not going to be sitting around making spell jars and doing whatever moon water stuff that you want to do. There's actually other stuff, and a lot of that is sort of, I don't know about you and your tradition, but I find it's really transformative. All the stuff that
Yes.
you thought you've dealt with rises up, and it's just like, oh my God, there's that again.
I mean, 100 years ago, maybe I liked to do the whole spell work and moon water jars. But after I got involved in the Gardnerian tradition, I mean, I really don't do anything like that either. It's more spiritual based. And, of course, if there's something somebody wants to do, a healing or something like that, I will be willing to do spell work for healing, um, especially if it's someone within our coven or their extended family. That's one thing. I'm always willing to do that. But the moon water spell jar kinds of things, I rarely do anything like that anymore. It's more like what we do in ritual. That's uplifting for me and has the most impact on my life.
Mm, and I guess in a way too, and this is, I'm interested in you running an outer court, because some people don't because of the amount of work involved. But it's almost like you're having to retrain people in a way of saying, well, that's that sort of craft, but what we do is different. It's more about self work, and when you go through the rituals, it's almost like plugging yourself into the current, and then you don't need to do all that external stuff.
Right. And that's probably one of the most challenging things when you have people that have come to you from either other eclectic groups or even other traditions, and in their head they're thinking, we didn't do it this way. That's a whole relearning process. I know you didn't do it this way. Sometimes they'll even bring me books of what they had done before. Oh, I did this in the Corellian tradition. I did this in this tradition. This is what we learned in outer court. And I'm like, or in this group, and I'm like, yep, don't bring the books. That's not what we're doing here. It's going to be a whole different experience for you. Um, and that's hard to teach somebody something different when they were already in their minds thinking this is the way it's going to be, but it's not.
Yeah.
So
And there's also sort of a bit of a, I know it's the same in the States, but it's different here, a little bit of a sort of a backlash in relation to someone telling you what to do. It should
yes,
be a free for all, but other than going, well, when you build a house, you need to lay your foundation. And what I'm trying to give you
exactly.
is the foundation, and there is a specific way of laying down your foundation if you want
Yes.
your craft to last more than the next fad that's coming through.
Yes, when they come to me and they say, "Well, I don't wanna be in a group that there's a hierarchy," and I'm thinking to myself, "Well, this is not it then." I mean, somebody's gotta somebody's gotta run the show. You know? Somebody's gotta be in charge here. If not, it's gonna be a free for all, and, we're gonna be going back to moon, water, and spell jars.
And get nothing done basically. But
No.
yeah, yeah, and it comes back to what you're saying earlier. It's like when they approach the coven, it's just like, can they know a little bit about the tradition or the group or and I know again there's a lot of sort of interpretations out there, but just know the basics. Know who Jill Gardner is could actually be really helpful if you want to join a
Yes.
Gardnerian group.
I always tell everybody that's coming to us, listen, before you even think about filling out that application, I said, do all your research on the Gardnerian tradition. And I mean everything. Social media, I mean we have the internet superhighway. There's a wealth of information there. You can find anything. I mean anything, even stuff you're not supposed to know. Read everything, because then you'll have at least a background on what you're planning to do, or if this is something that you feel that you're going to be comfortable doing, because it is a lot. It's a lot of work, and that's the one thing I try to tell people. It's not just coming to ritual. It's not just coming to Sabbath. There's work involved, and we lose more people that way. We lose more people when they find out that it's just not coming in for the social aspect, having some wine and doing ritual. Yes, it's social because we're all together, but when they find out that yes, there's a massive reading list, and yes, you have to do certain things in a period of time, and you have to demonstrate that you've been doing the work, when they figure that part out, that we lose more people that way.
Okay, so for someone who's been involved in the craft for some 35 years, a long period of time, how
It's a long
has that shaped you or changed you? And I'm thinking more along the lines, because I know for me, my craft I know it sort of has shaped the lens that I look out the world upon. And I'm just wondering, has the same happened to you? And if so, if there's any ways of sort of explaining how it might have shaped you, if that's possible.
Let's see. I think that I feel more empowered in my life by the craft, by being involved in the Gardnerian tradition. I think that there was a time in my life, and my husband said to me, I think your problem is that you're spiritually out of balance. And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, I feel like there's something missing from your life. And he's very involved in the Christian tradition. So he says, it feels like there's something that's out of balance. And he said, maybe you should join a women's group. And I'm like going, no. And that's when I started getting involved with like witchcraft. And he said to me, I see a whole change in you. There's a whole change. People that have known me for years said, you're just not the same person. I think I feel more empowered. I'm more tolerant of things. I'm more able to say, okay, this is not the hill that's worth dying on. Okay. I can just you don't always have to respond, even though and I'm more willing to teach. And I mean, not teach my group or my coven, but I'm more willing to teach the general public. And that's why I do things like this. I don't want them to feel that I always want to educate them. I don't want them thinking that everything they see on media in the media is what we really are, because they're getting the whole wrong impression. And then we lead to things like being called, so then you're a Satanist. No, there's nothing wrong with that either. But I feel like part of my path in this is educating the masses about what we do, because there's so many misconceptions. So for me, I think that really brought, when it breaks right down to it, I think that's what changed in me. And I wanted to tuck my pencil in my shirt so that no one knew what I was doing, because that just got to be too, I'm lazy. That I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to wear my pencil. I wanted to say, what is that? What does that mean? What, isn't that a satanic symbol? No, but here's what it is. So you know, and explaining it to someone so they understand it, and maybe they'll tell the next person. I know when I started this job, there were a lot of people that I didn't come out, but I know that people, I guess, outed me to my coworkers, and some of them were actually scared because they didn't understand it. So we were at a lunch meeting at one time, and I said, "Yeah, this is what I do, and this is what it is." And after that, everything was changed. Everything was, I'm just me there and work, and they know what I do, and that's it.
No, thank you for sharing that. Yes. And it's almost sort of disappointing that, I mean, Gardner sort of came out after the laws were repealed back in the 50s, and here we are, what, 70 odd years later, and we're still having to do the same sort of stuff. And it's just
Yes,
like, and it's almost like we've sort of gone backwards too in people's mindsets. And it's just like, okay, as other
we have.
forms of boundaries are coming up here.
Yes, we have gone backwards, and it's not, doesn't keep me up at night, but I worry about how far backwards we may go, because in Virginia there's already been a political person that has brought up that maybe witchcraft should be illegal, and that kind of came and went, and I was happy that that happened. But the transgender community, they make up like 1% of the population, and they're being targeted. Okay, they're being targeted. So, I mean, yes, we're on the fringe, and I think that most people don't take us seriously enough to say, "Oh, we have to do something about these people." But it's always in the back of my mind that, hey, it may not end up being like the Salem witch trials, but there's always the chance that people will have to shut down their shops or call them something else, or not be able to be as vocal in the media or on or in public. Like, I know that Christians had events in New Orleans that were picketed. Um, and those kind of things, they're always in the back of my mind, because my husband's always said to me, you're putting yourself out there. Yeah, 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 I know. It doesn't bother me, but in the back of my mind, I'm saying, well, it doesn't bother me right now, but nobody's
Yeah.
coming to burn me on my lawn either.
And I mean, it's a little bit different here in Australia, but then it's like we're looking at a global sort of shift as well, and it's sort of like how long, and this is what goes through my mind, how long before that starts infiltrating here. And I mean, where I
Yes,
live, we've recently, in the state that I live in, we've recently had a knife law change, which is actually includes swords. Swords now are a prohibited weapon, so to own your sword is actually illegal. And I'm looking at going, oh, so I've done, having to approach the police. And thankfully at this stage, the police are aware that, there are traditions who aren't Christians that actually have, I call them sharp pointy bits. And it's like, okay, but you still got to take responsibility. You can't go walking down the street with things like that,
right.
because then that will, and I think this is in a society where everybody's sort of focused on just them. If someone does
Yes,
that, I'm a witch, I'm allowed to have a sword. And it's just like, well, if you're being, and I say stupid, and really it is, or so self-centered,
yes,
that can actually impact upon everyone else. And I think this is something
yes,
that we need to constantly be aware of, that, yeah, the world doesn't revolve around us, and we don't have exclusions for religions or beliefs in a lot of
right.
countries.
I mean, we're protected by the First Amendment rights. Um, and there are, Wicca is recognized in the United States as a religion, but witchcraft isn't. It's not, it's covered under your First Amendment, but some people consider it a religion. And how do you prove that? How do you prove that you practice
Yeah,
the religion of witchcraft? You can't.
especially
There's no churches. There's,
Yeah, especially if they're looking at, say, what we were saying earlier on the media, how witchcraft is being depicted as non-religious, as a thing, as a
Right.
practice, and it's just so.
Right.
And then you're saying but it's a religion, and that the external person is going, but these people are saying it's a thing. It gets into a lot of grey
It
area, and
does.
yeah,
It does. And it's true that some people practice Wicca, that's their religion. Some people practice witchcraft, and that's their religion. And that's fine, but we do have religious freedom. But there's a lot of things that are freedoms that are being taken away from people in this country. And that's why, I think to myself, well, sometimes being on the fringe and people thinking you're a little crazy is not really such a bad thing, because I don't think, they'll come after us first. We might be on the low on the totem pole, which I'm happy about. But then I think, look, Gerald Gardner, I mean, he had the cone of power, and he used that to hold back Hitler from the invasion of Britain.
Britain.
So, I mean, I think to myself, all this infighting and things like that, if we all just sat back and said, hey, look what we can do if we all came together and stopped being silly, I think that would be pretty impressive.
Yeah,
But,
definitely. Yes.
goals, and those are goals.
And sometimes we get caught up in our own identities, and we forget that the outside world just looks at us all, and they don't care whether we are just doing witchcraft as a practice or if we follow a tradition or whatever. They just look at us all and say, you're all weird.
Yeah.
That's how they see us, instead of, as you said, out infighting. Which sort of brings me to the next topic, and this is something that sort of goes around and ebbs and flows, and we were sort of talking about it off camera too, is one of the criticisms that external people from traditions sort of label at or throw at people who follow traditions, and that is about gatekeeping. And it's not
Yes.
important these days about keeping the teachings oath bound, because everything's out there apparently.
Everything's
So
out there.
so what are your thoughts on basically the accusation or the idea that everything's available, so there's no point of initiatory oaths, and also gatekeeping, and is it relevant in this day and age, our modern world?
Is it relevant? To me, it's relevant in the sense that you don't want to just bring in everyone. You don't want to bring in people who are, for whatever reason. I mean, people here, there are some people out there that say, oh, you practice skyclad, oh, I want to join that group, and they're serious. They're serious about that. That's why, I mean, we vet our people really well, because firstly, I'm bringing them into my home with my family. That's number one. Is that gatekeeping? Maybe, but it's also, self-protection. As far as everything being out there, it is out there. Everything is out there. I feel like, if someone says to me, I read this in this book, I'm like, well, I can't confirm or deny, but I know it's out there. I've read it myself, but, I don't know if it's true or not. Whether I know if it's true or not, I'll just tell them that. I think I don't think, I think that the tradition has room to evolve. Okay. But I don't think if you keep evolving it too much and changing things too much, then you're not practicing the tradition. Like, I've had this conversation with my husband. I'm like, your mother passed down her recipe for mashed potatoes, and she puts cheese in her mashed potatoes and it's delicious. But you put scallions and cheese in your mashed potatoes. Is it delicious? Yes, it's probably better than hers. But is it the tradition she passed down? No, it's not. Is it just as good? Yes, it is. But it's not the same tradition. I don't feel I don't feel there's anything wrong with saying, hey, this is the tradition that was passed down from Gerald Gardner. This is a tradition that my high priestess and high priest passed down to me. This is what I'm passing down to my people. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Because if you say there's something wrong with that, then you're saying that everything from your downline is wrong as well. So gatekeeping, as I said, the only gatekeeping I want to do is make sure people are serious, that they take the tradition serious, that they do the work and they're serious about what it is that they're doing, and that it's not just something to do until they find something better comes along. That's so for gatekeeping, that's as far as I gatekeep. I don't know how everybody else feels. I mean, I don't know. I think that if you're going to pass down something for 70 years and it's been passed down a certain way, then it's a tradition. And if you want to change it, because you can add but not subtract, and all covens are autonomous, do whatever you want. Okay. If you want to call it your tradition, that's fine. If that's what you pass down to your groups. But for me, this is my tradition for me. What you pass down to your people is your tradition for you. Is it wrong? I don't know. I'm not in your tradition. So, you know, I mean, I don't think it's wrong. I think you're doing, if you're serving the gods, and that's what why I started, why I became a third degree high priestess. What did I want to do? What in my mind, what was I going to accomplish? Service to the gods. And in what way was I going to do that? I was going to teach the tradition as it was passed down to me. That was it. I didn't overthink it. I didn't say, well, is this, right? Or is this, nope, this is the way it was passed down to me. If it was good enough for Deborah, it was good enough for me. And that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And these words do get bandied about, and it's just like, well, if you're going to call me gatekeeping or whatever, obviously this is not the right tradition, or I'm not the right teacher for you.
Exactly.
So yeah, and everybody,
Exactly.
instead, every coven is autonomous, and also evolving, does things differently, and that you can't really paint everybody with the same brush as well.
Nope. And just because someone is not changing things or is passing it down, it doesn't make them phobic of anything else. It's just the way they were taught. I mean, it's very easy for saying, "Oh, you're anti-LGBTQAI if you don't do it this way." No, my daughter's gay. I mean, I have family that's trans. I'm not gatekeeping. I'm not excluding anybody. It's just the way it was taught to me, and that's the way I'm teaching it. You know, if you want to label it as something, some kind of derogatory comment, then you'll have to go back and complain to my downline, because that's the way I was taught.
Yeah, yeah. As I said, it's getting back into labels and also individuals' perceptions of things, usually from the outside.
Right.
Trying to look in, but they can't, and then they're coming up with all
Yes.
sorts of assumptions based on the rumor mill, which runs
Oh
right
God. Yes.
everywhere.
The rumor mill. I've heard so many things about myself, and I was like, I'm so glad people actually know me to know that none of this is true.
Get amazed at what I'm doing. It's just like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. That's fine.
Yeah. Was I there for that? Actually, that's what I always say. Was I there for that? Because I don't remember that being a thing.
Oh, Tracy, it's wonderful to the end of our time, and it's wonderful, having these chats with you. What I would just like to ask is that, again, for someone who's been in the craft for a few years now, shall we just say, is there
Yes.
anything that you know now that you wish you knew when you commenced your journey?
What I wish I knew when I commenced this journey. I guess it would be that, um, let's see. Well, it was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. But it was a good work. It was a good work. It was fulfilling. And I learned a lot about myself. more than I'll ever learn from anybody about anybody else. I've learned so much about myself. I tend to be an introverted extrovert. So, like doing something like this is nerve wracking for me because I usually keep to myself. So I learned that, yeah, I can find those parts of myself to act as a high priestess, to lead a coven. I mean, it actually surprised me, you know, and when my group says, "Well, you're really a great high priestess," and I'm thinking to myself, "Are you sure about that?" Because it's like, I mean, it's not something I ever expected of myself. So I found an inner strength. I found my voice. Um, I found the empowerment of being, something part of something bigger, and hopefully passing something down that Gerald would be proud of.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much for sharing that. And one last question. Do you have any advice for the seeker, especially someone who's more interested in following a tradition, especially Gardnerian tradition, as opposed to what could be perceived as a commercial fad these days? Any advice for the genuine seeker, what they should do?
Research everything. Make sure you research everything. Read as much as you can. Okay. Um, be prepared to be pushed out of your comfort zone. This is what I tell everyone. You're going to be pushed out of your comfort zone. We are going to expect things of you that you didn't expect of yourself. And we want you to ask questions. We don't want you to feel like we're on a pedestal, that we're unapproachable. We want you to come and say, I feel weird about this, or I don't know if I'm right for this. Come to us. We'll tell you. If you don't feel you're right for us, maybe there's another group that is right for you. I had a seeker that was a very good friend of mine who, when we told her, well, she was with my outer court group, and we said, somebody had mentioned that Gardnerians practice skyclad, and she said, I can't do that. She said, I can see everybody else naked, but I can't be naked myself. We
Lead. And we've had a little bit of technological difficulty. So I'm back with Tracy, who had our conversation censored. It appeared to be by Zoom. So are you able to sort of pick up that story that you were telling?
Yes. So I had a wonderful seeker and a wonderful friend who really was interested in the Gardnerian tradition, and I knew she would be an amazing high priestess, or amazing priestess of the craft. But when she learned that we practice skyclad, she was not on board. She didn't feel comfortable with that, and she said, "Oh, I feel horrible. I really want to be with your group, but I just can't do that." And so I had another of my initiates was also a high priest in the Welsh tradition. And he said, well, the Welsh practice with robes. And I said, well, that's perfect. I'm like, if you're interested, connect with him. And now she's a second degree high priestess in that tradition. So that worked out very well. But these are the kinds of things that um, they're like a make or break thing with people that are seekers, and I get that. Our application, no, it's funny because I always say we lose more people at question 13, which is, are you comfortable with ritual nudity? And then usually if I don't hear back from them, I know it's the curse of question 13. And that's fine because I know ahead of time that they're not going to be able to do this. So you know, and I'm happy if they find their way, and I'm more than happy to point them in the right direction.
Wonderful, wonderful. We are running out of time, Tracy, and even with our little sort of censored break, which was a bit funny. Firstly, I would like to thank you for taking your time and chatting to us about the Gardnerian tradition. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you, I know you're just saying you're trying to get rid of your outer court, you're down to one person, but if people are, especially in North Carolina, what are the best ways for them to getting in touch with you?
The best way is through my email, which is hearts, HEARTS 333 at AOL.com. That's probably the easiest way. I'm also on Madragora Majika, which is kind of like a witch fox kind of thing. And also it's Darksome, which is also a really good resource for people looking for covens and, like-minded people. But I would say the best way to get me through my email if they're looking for training in the Gardnerian tradition. And we're not really closing our outer court, but right now we don't have anybody. Until we get a really serious seekers, then here we are.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And I'll put the links below as well for everybody who's watching this recording. So as I said again, Tracy, it's been an absolute delight talking to you today. And thank you very much for sharing the magic in you.
Thank you so much for having me, Frances. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, blessed be.
Blessed be.